We've reached 15 episodes. This is the Deep Drive. I'm your co-host, Ahan Rungta, as usual, here with my co-host, Max Goldstein. We have some bad news and we have some good news. The bad news is that the season is ending very, very soon, and we are nearing the end of our show, the Deep Drive, for the season. Um, Most likely, next week's episode will be our last, which means Max and I will not be partaking in Ball Institute activities together for a little bit. The good news is that we have a lot to talk about today, and we have a lot to cover in our next couple of episodes. We're going to make it count. And with the exit of baseball season, we're going to be adding some new content at Ball Institute, and there's going to be some announcements coming right after our last show. We got basketball, and apparently I'm a hockey sharp, and you guys are getting to witness that, so that's fun. If you want all the betting content as well as all fantasy football content, all that combined for less than $1 per day, you've got to be in the Ball Institute Discord. You can get all our services, one package for either $25 per month for a 6-month package or a $30 per month flat charge. But Max, I'm ready to talk about some baseball. We're living in some historic times, and a lot of it is coming from one player. But in Game 3 of the World Series, we saw an 18-inning game. Fun fact: I have watched entering Game 3. I had watched every single pitch of the playoffs. Um, and the last time, or the only other time, there has been an 18-plus inning World Series game, I had watched every single pitch of the playoffs in that 2018 year as well until that 18 inning game, and it seemed like both times going to sleep was the solution to ending that game. Um, I not fully accurate because I went to sleep in the 15th inning. But regardless, there's stuff to talk about. We have some good things to talk about, and we got some bad things to talk about. Any immediate reactions before we get into the nitty gritties?
Um, Not too much. I mean, the game yesterday was pretty crazy because I don't know about you, but like the Dodgers almost hit a walk-off home run like 3 times.
When Will Smith bat flipped and Varsho made a routine catch on the fly ball, that was my cue to go to sleep. Because I genuinely thought that game was going to break the 18 inning record, which I very much had in mind. I mean, fun fact for those who don't know. So obviously I'm a Red Sox fan, but the last time there was an 18 inning game, it was at Dodger Stadium, and the only Red Sox loss of that series. So I'm fine with the Red Sox losing that game in hindsight. But I had an exam in the morning, and it was a Saturday night. I distinctly remember this. I had an exam on Sunday morning, and I never even ended up needing to do that exam, but I did well in the exam out of pure rage, I suppose, of how that game ended. But I woke up and I saw the game had ended, and I was getting flashbacks to that game as soon as it went to extras. And can we just talk about, as our friend of the program, Book It with Trent, tweeted about, like the extreme aura of the camera panning to Yoshinobu Yamamoto warming up. If that game had lasted at least one more inning, we would have seen Yamamoto. Now, the funny thing about this is that we have a Yoshinobu Yamamoto ticket, or to win World Series MVP ticket. The less funny thing about it is that Otani, if the Dodgers win this series, conditional on the Dodgers winning the series, probably has this thing locked up already. And if he pitches well tonight, it might be minus money by the end of the night. So a mixed feeling of emotions, but it would have been extreme aura if Yamamoto, after pitching a complete game shutout, would have pitched in that game. My name is Jeffrey, says Muncie in all caps. Muncie went 0 for 7 yesterday, which tempts me to pick him as my Dodger for Game 4. If you know, you know. But yeah, I really want to talk about stuff that's happened so far in this series. Let's talk about some good things first, because we have a couple of small victory laps, right? Like we make fun of our bad takes a lot. We make fun of our own. We're self-deprecating, both of us, but we also make fun of each other sometimes. Let's talk about some good things. I mean, immediate rewards for Max. You brought up Addison Barger in our pre-World Series episode. We have a YouTube short up about it now. and it's quite the aura moment for you because you brought up Addison Barger, one of my arguably my favorite player on the Blue Jays roster. I've been yapping about Barger all season long, and he was the immediate hero in Game 1. You want to take your small little victory lap about that?
Sure. I mean, it's nice that a player that I said could make a difference. It's cool to see him playing well. He's now 4 for 9. He homered in the first game, and he's like, he was a good hitter in the regular season. We've talked about it before about how like his actual production, like it makes it seem like he's not as good of a hitter as he actually is. Like his expected numbers suggest that he's a better hitter than, I think his weighted runs created plus in the regular season, it was between 100 and 110. So in the playoffs, it's up to 167, which for the playoffs, that's incredible. And he's walking more, he's striking out less. So he's been very important to the Blue Jays team.
And he had an outfield assist, which was quite the theme of Game 3. Insane defensive plays. We talk about the fact that it was a sports equinox yesterday. We had NBA, NHL, NFL, and MLB. And the one MLB game was easily the best American pro sports game on television yesterday. So big W for baseball there. And the fact that the game went 18 innings, so you got to see the length of 2 baseball games, and still it seemed like people were engaged from start to finish. This is good for baseball. And just I tweeted before the series about kind of a semi-sarcastic tweet that the Dodgers using their revenue on good players and building the super team, sort of trying to buy a championship is disgusting, because I wish my team would do that, right? And people get really mad at the Dodgers for sort of getting the super team, which a lot of it is not homegrown, so to speak. But we fail to realize that two things, the two sides of the story. One is there are other teams trying to do the same thing. There are a few other teams, and they're not doing it as successfully, obviously, because they're, you can buy players, but you still have to buy the right players. You have to build an organization, build a culture where people want to play there. And also, there are organizations like my own right now, like the Red Sox, where they have the ability to do similar things and they're just not. So I think it's good for baseball that we're getting a good series so far. And it's good for baseball that the Dodgers' big names, most of them are coming through in these big moments. So I think that is great. I want to talk about one not so big name that played a role yesterday, and it's one that I brought up in episode 6 of this podcast, Edgardo Enriquez. He was an afterthought in this pitching staff for obvious reasons. There are a lot of good pitchers on this staff. The bullpen was obviously going to be a problem for the Dodgers, but I don't know if I explicitly used this analogy when we, talked about bullpens before the playoffs started, but bullpens are the running backs of playoff baseball. And I will stand by this take. And Max, you may not fully agree, but I stand by the take that relative to the other skill positions in football, running backs are the least important in terms of getting premium talent. This is an analytics take, but it has been proven with common sense over and over again. And I stand by the fact that you can mask bad bullpens if you are elite at the other spots. And the Dodgers and Blue Jays both having bullpen as a weakness all season long, and being in the World Series is at least a temporary W for that take. But Edgardo Enriquez is someone I brought up as someone who could make a postseason impact, especially because this Dodgers bullpen was so bad for a majority of the season. He finally got the call because he had to before the legendary Will Klein. So people are going to forget that Enriquez pitched 2 scoreless innings, had 2 strikeouts. And both of us talked about like the Jekyll and Hyde sort of effect that Enriquez could have, because at the time that we talked about him, the sample size was very, very small. It's still kind of small. But there is potential to be an elite reliever here. His fastball averaged over 100 miles per hour last night, which you kind of expect from him when you're not pitching every single day like the other arms, and you have that kind of arm. You kind of expect that. He gave it his all, and Max, you seem to be on the same page with me that even after this World Series passes, Enriquez could be a big part of the Dodgers going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think your analogy, I think it is pretty good because, like, usually it's not a good idea to sign a running back for so much money or draft a running back high in the draft because they get hurt or their performance. It depends a lot on, like, other players on the team. Like, if the quarterback's good, if the offensive line can protect well. I like you're right that relievers they're not the most important thing, especially when like the starter can pitch a complete game, in which case like who cares what relievers you have. So I think I don't know like I all along I've just said that like in the case maybe that you don't have such good starters, like I would argue the Blue Jays don't have such good starters. Like if the Blue Jays had an elite bullpen, then they could maybe get away with that because the relief could pitch some of the innings that the starters, like the Dodgers starters, throw. But I even though maybe we feel differently about bullpens, I still actually like your analogy.
I will appreciate you somewhat agreeing with me without exactly agreeing with me, which is what the show is about, right? Like, and yeah, I mean, I'm proud of my boy Enriquez for doing his job last night, 2 innings, but sample size is still small, and relievers are so volatile, man. Like, I'm old enough to remember when Matt Barnes was an all-star for the Red Sox, right? Y'all remember? You kids won't remember that name. You little 11-year-olds who watch the show won't remember Matt Barnes, but I do, right? And the best relievers of all time don't have 20-year-long primes, right? Like the best relievers of all time, except the Mariano Rivera's or whatever. But the elite relievers, their primes only last a few years, and it's a very volatile position. People talk about not giving starting pitchers huge contracts because of the injury risk, and with the scale in consideration, like that's true to a certain extent for relievers as well. But Enrique is certainly a name that I don't think this is the last we see of him in this series, especially because there isn't a single reliever on this Dodgers staff where I could be like, when he comes in, yeah, I'm expecting an elite inning, and that extends to Roki Sasaki, by the way, because whether he throws strikes or not is damn near a coin flip at this point. I mean, we saw him almost blow that game in Milwaukee, and then Blake Trinan saved him, and we've seen the other way around where Blake Trinan almost blows a game, Roki Sasaki saves him, and it just so not happened in the playoffs yet, where a Dodgers reliever almost blows the game and then cannot be saved. So that has not happened yet. And I feel like if the Blue Jays are to win a game, it might be through that route. Win another game, it might be the route of the Dodgers just blowing a lead because they don't have anybody to go to. And whether that happens tonight or not, with how shorthanded they are, we will see.
Also, I think maybe these bullpens they're not the greatest in the world, but like the fact that Henriquez is like maybe the Dodgers' last reliever, and like I would argue, I know the sample's small, but I'd say like it. Someone could argue that he's a good reliever right now. Like the stuff plus is like 131. I know he was a top 100 prospect on Fangraphs. Like he sits 100. He's hard to square up. Like the Dodgers bullpen hasn't even mattered, honestly, because they've built big enough leads and the Stars have done so well. But like, I think the Dodgers bullpen's good in addition to their offense and their incredible starting pitching.
Yeah, and there's a lot of teams that would absolutely take Eduardo Enriquez right now and try to make him a closer. So
like, I think he'd be one of the best relievers on the Tigers, but maybe that's just a bad thing about the Tigers.
And I think the point you bring up about the fact that it's not even clear like who the best relievers are on the Dodgers is kind of a closed captioning of kind of the theme of the rest of the episode, which is we got to talk about both of these managers. But before we do that, I take it you have a blind ranking for me to do.
Yes. So I'm gonna give you. I'm not gonna tell you how many, but I guess
Oh,
I have to. There's 4 starting pitchers.
okay.
So I'm gonna want you to rank these, one being the greatest of the 4. So you're gonna. The theme's pretty easy, but I think the game is illustrative. Okay, so the first pitcher is Shohei Ohtani.
I mean, I'm assuming this is going to be just starting pitchers in the World Series. Um, as a starting pitcher alone, this might sound crazy, but I'm going to put him 4.
Okay. Next up, Blake Snell.
I'm going to put him 2 because I see. But I think before the series, if you had asked me to rank every single pitcher in the World Series, I would have said 1. But we have Yamamoto agendas to push, and he's pushing them for me right now. Pause if need be, but he's pushing them for me right now. So I have to leave that spot open for him. I'll put Blake Snell 2.
Okay, now I'll give you your pitcher, Yamamoto.
Yeah, put him at 1. No questions asked.
And then the final one, and you should know the theme. You basically got the theme, but Tyler Glasnow.
Okay. I mean, I thought you might mix in a Blue Jay here, but I'm completely happy with putting Glasnow at 3. And the only reason I'm okay with Glasnow over Ohtani is because we have not. I don't think we've seen back-to-back starts from Ohtani at all in his Dodgers career, where he goes super deep into a game and he has to get himself out of trouble. And Glasnow has a track record of doing that. But I could, if you wanted to flip 3 and 4, I'm okay with it.
I think you did a pretty good job. I've mentioned how we both realize how good the rotation is, but like the 4th starter on the Dodgers, whoever you want to pick, is still an elite starting pitcher, which is kind of unfair.
And there's certainly an argument to saying that all 4 of them are better than Kevin Gausman, who is obviously the Blue Jays ace. And I know you can put Kevin Gausman over Glasnow and Ohtani if you want, but the argument is certainly there that the Blue Jays ace would be the Dodgers' 5th best starter. And let's not forget that Roki Sasaki was initially going to be a starter, and the book is not closed yet on whether he can be a starter in the future or not. And I joke about how hard Dave Roberts' job is. Like, what if my guy Yoshinobu Yamamoto gets into trouble? Will I really get this, a dominant performance out of my number 2, Blake Snell? Ooh, who should I throw in next? I'll just throw in Tyler Glasnow. I guess I'll have to put him in the game. Or if this goes to a game 7, we're going to have to put Shohei Ohtani in the game. Yeah, this guy has such a headache. He has to pick between his Rolex and his golden shoes. But it brings me to our next segment, which is we got to talk about the managers in this series. Loki iCarly says, what's up? Be like Loki iCarly. Enjoy the streams. We got to talk about these 2 managers because we talked last episode and the previous one about John Schneider versus Dan Wilson in the ALCS. And I was rooting for the Mariners. I think everyone who tailed my futures bet was rooting for the Mariners in the series, except the Blue Jays fans. A lot of us were rooting for the Mariners, and I felt like John Schneider did not have a great series, and it didn't matter because Dan Wilson had the worst game 7. And the book is still open on whether how much of an impact the managers truly had. I mean, it's the least quantifiable thing in baseball. How much of impact the managers can truly have on their roster. I think, I've always said that Dave Roberts' lineup construction as well as his bullpen management, which seem probably the 2 most important things about a manager. I think he struggles at both. And yesterday in game 3, I thought John Schneider got outmanaged by Dave Roberts, and I think neither had a good game. Let's talk about Dave Roberts first. I mean, he won the game, and there are fewer things to talk about here, so I want to call out the elephants in the room. First of all, his bullpen management has been suspect for a long, long time. Yesterday in particular, I thought his sequencing of pitchers and the sequence in which they were warming up, even if they didn't enter the game, was questionable. That's something we could spend a whole different episode kind of breaking down like who was warming up in each inning or whatever. I thought the cherry on top was he walked Andres Jimenez with Sheehan on the mound, right-handed pitcher, to face Davis Schneider. Now, in a vacuum, what you're seeing here is intentionally walking a left-handed bat with first base open, quote unquote, to face a right-handed bat. This completely removes the rest of the context of the inning, of who the hitters are, et cetera, et cetera. And if you take into account the context, I think this was a complete blunder. First of all, the situation was a tie game in the top of the inning. It wasn't even the bottom of the inning. Now, I understand you're trying to not give up a single run, but still, you're to me, it's about expectancy of runs given up, unless it's the bottom of the inning, right? It's about expectancy of runs given up. You don't want to put on a free base runner. And I know you're going to talk about, the concept of putting up free base runners later in the episode as well. But you don't want to put on free base runners in the top of the inning. You don't want to put up a free base runner when the guy is an 80 WRC plus hitter against your right-handed pitching. And you really should not do it when the guy you're trying to face instead has a 155 WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So Dave Roberts put on the number 9 hitter so he can face a better hitter with more runners on base. So I thought that was utterly atrocious. And to me, that wasn't even one of the worst things that happened in last night's game. I thought most of the bad things that happened in last night's game came from John Schneider. But just want your general thoughts on the decision, the overall philosophy of putting on base runners in the top of innings.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 155 to 80, like, that's overestimating, or that's overstating the gap between the two, given it's a righty. Like, Schneider, the 155s, like, he's not that amazing of a hitter. Like, he's not even playing every day. And then Andres Jimenez, like, I think his career WRC plus, it's probably close to 100, but he has had injuries and stuff. But I agree that it's almost never a good idea to just put someone on, especially when it's a 9 hitter who's Andres Jimenez is definitely not a good hitter. Like, there's zero reason to do that. And it means you're going to have to face Vladimir Guerrero and sooner. Like, I agree that it was a bad move. Like, there's no questioning that.
And it's a point you brought up a couple of episodes ago about putting on Cal Raleigh with nobody on base. And I think we don't necessarily fully agree on how much the difference in the expected number of runs was in that scenario. But I think we certainly agree that in most scenarios, putting on a free base runner, unless it's the bottom of the bottom of an inning with a potential walk-off or you're setting up a double play, if you're outside of that general scenario, especially in the top of an inning, putting on a free base runner is probably not the best thing to do. Now, I take it you also, by extension, do you also object to intentionally walking Ohtani on the other side? Do you also intentionally object to intentionally walking Ohtani with nobody on base?
I think, first of all, I don't know if it's the case for the many streamers watching this, but you're frozen.
Oh, this is not great, but you can hear me, right?
I hear you just fine, but you're like a still face.
That's objectively hilarious. Great. Andy, our editor, is going to put some hilarious animation until it unfreezes. I guess that's the solution. Proceed. I'm waiting on you to proceed while I figure out what the fuck is going on. Max, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Proceed. Just
it's
proceed.
it's distracting.
God damn it, Max. Being distracted by something not moving is crazy. That's actually pretty fun. Nice. Nice. All right, I'm gonna just make you. I'm gonna make you talk and proceed with this. This is. I'm working on it.
Okay.
I think you were talking about Otani.
I mean, I probably should do more. I would like to like dive deeper to like gather evidence, but I'm pretty sure it's like you were saying, like unless it's the bottom of like the nine for like late in a game, it's like usually it's a bad idea to just put someone on base because like they're get that it's creating an opportunity for the other team to drive the runner in. Like the way I put it last time is you should only put someone on base if like you feel like I mean this is obvious, but only put someone on base if you feel like your team's better off with here, take your base. And like Otani is an excellent hitter, but I don't know if he's like otherworldly enough to justify just with like one out in the bottom of the ninth with like I know you don't like Mookie Betts, but Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman coming up, you're gonna put the go ahead runner on, like especially a guy that can steal the base. Like I know he could hit a home run and end the game, but like usually Otani still gets out. Like I like if it was let's say Pa has doubled and then it was no one out, runner on second in the bottom of the ninth, then I can understand putting Otani on if you want because like it doesn't matter if he scores. But like I just think like if I was a fan, like if I'm at the game and we walk Otani, like let's say it was unintentional. Like if you unintentionally walk Otani, would you really as a fan be like, "Oh yeah, now our team has a better chance of winning"? Because if you say that, like usually pitchers hate when they walk someone, and fans are frustrated. Like, oh, you never want to put a base runner on. Like, unless as a Blue Jay fan that you felt after you walk, after like if Hoffman actually tried to face Otani, like if he walked him, and then as a fan you're like, yeah, our team has a better chance of winning now. Like that would be the only way that you'd be okay walking him. So I can't support that decision.
I actually think we fundamentally disagree on this because I actually think John Schneider didn't walk Otani enough yesterday. And it like I think we definitely don't disagree on the concept of you are increasing your expected number of runs given up by putting Otani on. Like obviously we agree with that. Like but it's by definition you are increasing your expected number of runs by having more base runners with the same number of outs. I fundamentally disagree on. I think you're underestimating the difference in expected OPS if you are throwing strikes to Mookie Betts with a runner on than if you're throwing strikes to Otani. And I think this is a good segue into my entire rant about John Schneider. And Sterna kind of like makes part of the point for him. His show had 2 home runs at that point in the game when they were walking him late. I mean, I think like Sterna makes a slightly good point and slightly
good job,
point.
Sterna.
Was that sarcasm? I think he makes a slightly good point, but also like you don't necessarily you don't overcorrect to 2 plate appearances. Yeah. But I think you definitely need to correct to the entire resume of Otani versus the entire resume of Mookie Betts, what kind of form he's in, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about John Schneider, shall we? strike one, no pun intended, he figured out way too late that you may not want to pitch to Ohtani. And I think, no, Stern, I wasn't saying you were being sarcastic. I was asking Max if he was being sarcastic by saying good job.
No, you were saying a slightly good point, so I was complimenting Stern.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a good point in that. I think Max, you're maybe underestimating the difference in impact of Ohtani and Mookie, but maybe I'm overestimating it. But I mean, I do want to talk about this anyway. So strike one, he figured out way too late you may not want to pitch to Ohtani, and specifically the Sir Anthony Dominguez at bat to Ohtani with nobody on base, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying you intentionally put up the four fingers and say it's an intentional walk, but regardless of the result, I would have rather intentionally walked Ohtani when he has clearly been, seeing the ball very well. Very few whiffs since the Milwaukee series. When he is clearly playing the best version of himself after he's already, not made it out that game. I don't necessarily think you overcorrect in one game, but I think I would definitely rather face Mookie Betts against Sir Anthony Dominguez with a chance to keep my lead rather than Ohtani. And I don't necessarily think I would have intentionally walked him, but I would have not thrown him a middle fastball for starters. And yeah, after that, the game tying home run, he realizes you may not want to pitch to Ohtani. So this is perhaps the least of my concerns with Schneider last night. So let's warm up, shall we? Later on in the game, Addison Barger, who we've already established is not just a good baseball player, but someone who had a major impact in game one. He hit the ball hard multiple times for singles. Later on, he has 4 hits in the World Series already, and every single one was a hard hit ball. Max, you brought up that in the playoffs, some of his outs have been hard hit balls. This is a good, baseball player. He's a solid defender, especially, with the arm, but a great hitter. We need to talk as a society about pinch running decisions, honestly, more so than we need to talk about bullpen management, because this is a problem I've seen with Aaron Boone. This is a problem I've seen with almost every manager in a big spot, except maybe like Alex Cora and AJ Hinch. I think they're generally good about the philosophies of pinch running. Managers are so quick to pinch run one of their best hitters in situations where you aren't adding much value by putting on a different base runner. He pinch ran Miles Straw for Addison Barger in a tie game. And later on, Miles Straw made multiple outs with runners in scoring position coming up to bat. Now, you don't necessarily play for the 11th inning when you're in the 8th or 9th. I understand that. You play for trying to win the game that inning. But Addison Barger has an above average speed. He has a 65th percentile sprint speed per Baseball Savant. I understand that Miles Straw is in the 95th percentile. And I understand that Miles Straw can steal a base. But this wasn't the first offense. There were multiple pinch runners in this game. I thought it was pretty karmic, not necessarily correlated, but pretty karmic that the Blue Jays made so many outs on the base paths, including multiple from pinch runners. I think you cannot pinch run for Addison Barger there. You're not adding significant value by pinch running Miles Straw. In a tie game, it would have been awfully nice if Addison Barger was up to bat with runners on base later on in the game. So I thought that was strike 2. As a side note, I want to say the send by Carlos Fablis on Davis Schneider around third base was a bad one because he was out by a lot. I do want to bring up that the broadcast continuing to say that it was a bad send because Vlad was on deck was not the right thing to say. And it won't be the last thing I say about the broadcast today, by the way. But I don't think that was the right thing to say because they failed to acknowledge that first base was open with 2 outs. Vlad would have gotten intentionally walked, and it would have been a bases-loaded situation for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa instead. I do want to point that out because it seems the broadcast did not want to point that out. But it was a bad send because David Schneider was out by so much that Will Smith actually caught the ball and started crawling toward Davis Schneider because he was waiting for him to slide at home plate. So it was a bad send because he had no chance of being safe unless the throw was unless there was a fielding error, right? So it was way too aggressive. So I thought that was a mistake by Carlos Fablis. And to continue on the John Schneider train, last thing I want to say, I completely disagree with Miles Straw bunting in the 12th inning. Um, After you pinch run Alejandro Kirk for Tyler Heineman, the backup catcher. Now, I won't complain about pinch running Alejandro Kirk there. I actually thought that was the correct thing to do just because of the differential between Alejandro Kirk and any other capable base runner. You have to go for that one run there. That was correct. I disagreed with Miles Straw bunting for two reasons. First of all, Miles Straw, I looked at his history trying to bunt. It's actually not great. He's not an experienced bunter. He's not a storied good bunter. Actually, threefold. The second reason is if you're pinch running a much better base runner and you want Miles Straw to bunt just to move him to second base, it better be because the hitters coming up are extremely great, with runners in scoring position, or you feel like there's no chance that Miles Straw can move the runner otherwise. And Miles Straw specifically profiles as a hitter who is very likely going to make an out, but he's also very likely not going to ground into a double play because he's so fast. So by taking the bat out of his hands, you are completely eliminating the potential of him getting a hit to move the runners, from first, to first and second, nobody out, or potentially even first and third, nobody out if he hits an oppo single. And also, he left the bunt on with 2 strikes. So it was a completely ridiculous sequence of events in that inning. I thought he blew that inning. I talked about J.P. Crawford bunting in the second inning with the Mariners. I thought this was equally dumb of a decision. You let Miles Straw swing the bat, knowing that he's probably not getting a hit, but you have to give yourself the chance at the big inning and let him swing away. So I thought this was an awful night for John Schneider, and it was capped off with one last decision before I went to bed that didn't actually cost him immediately, but it was potentially his worst decision of the night. When Alex Call pinch hit for Andy Pages with the walk-off run at third base with 1 out, first off, I thought the game was going to be over because I thought Alex Call would send that ball to the outfield. The game would be over. Doesn't do his job. Eric Lauer gets a big out. Credit to Eric Lauer for that. Then you get Ohtani. Obviously, you have to walk him to face Mookie Betts. He finally realized that you would rather face Mookie Betts, who is a career 100 WRC plus in his 400 plate appearance sample in his playoff career, by the way. He finally realized you pitched Mookie Betts. And then with 2 outs, and first and third 2 out, John Schneider said, no, I want to face Freddie Freeman. I was so utterly disgusted. I was appalled. I thought it was an utter disgrace to the game I love and the fact that we got such a good game that I completely removed the fact that I wasn't biased in this game. I'm a neutral party. I completely ignored that to root against the Blue Jays in that moment because I wanted Freddie Freeman to send that ball to Madagascar. And he hit a warning track fly ball for an out, and it took the 18th inning for him to finally hit that home run. So John Schneider did not pay for it in that moment, but I think in no circumstance do you intentionally walk Mookie Betts to load the bases to face not just the better hitter, but the better hitter with no room for error because you cannot walk Freddie Freeman to lose the game, right? So I thought that was perhaps his worst decision of the night, one of the only ones that he didn't actually pay for. So John Schneider deserved that L in Game 3. Rant over.
I think you have something against Mookie Betts because, I know that he did not have a good season, but we're still talking about a hitter that's rivaled Freddie Freeman's greatness. Not this year, but Mookie Betts last year at a 140 WRC plus. I know you're probably gonna bring up his playoff mediocrity, but he had a 165 WRC the previous season. He has a career 136, and lefties usually don't hit lefties well. Kerry Carpenter in the regular season, I don't know why in the playoffs it stopped, but the Tigers would pinch hit a lot of times not great hit. bad hitting righties are sometimes better versus lefties than like a pretty good hitting lefty. And like Freddie Freeman for his career, he has a 120 WRC plus versus lefties. And Mookie Betts in his career, it's versus lefties, it has to be well above. I'll check the number, but in his career, he's 140. So I think that the Blue Jays numbers too would say that you'd rather Eric Lauer has a better chance of getting Freddie Freeman out than Mookie Betts.
And I would argue that, yes, we like large sample sizes, but players change over time and players change from season to season. I mean, you know that better than anybody, that a player can be a completely different player than they were last year, either through adjustments or, something physically or whatever. Like, there's many reasons a player can be different. I also genuinely do not as much as I like to make fun of the fact that Mookie Betts has a history, a 400 plate appearance sample of not coming through in the playoffs. I also think, like, that point aside, I don't care what he did in the regular season 7 years ago, because this season he has a 106 WRC plus against left-handed pitching, and Freddie Freeman has a 136 WRC plus. So if you like a large sample size, I'll give you the sample size of the whole season, and the sample size of the whole season tells me that Freddie Freeman is a much better hitter against left-handed pitching. So I think you're undervaluing how much decline we've seen for Mookie Betts, even if you don't care about the playoff history.
Maybe but I was like, I also checked. I'm a member on Fangraphs, and like Steamer has like projections versus lefties, and I don't know when I'm not sure if these numbers are like at the very end of this season, but like they project Mookie Betts like to have a 140 WRC plus versus lefties, and Freddie Freeman 118. So you could argue that gap is too large. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but I don't think you can penalize Schneider. He's not going off of their performance this season. And Mookie Betts is like a future Hall of Famer. I know he didn't have a good season this past year, but he's better than his numbers from this season would show. And I think the Blue Jays, by intentionally walking him to face Freeman, I mean, that's what they're saying. They're not trying to lose. So in their opinion, Schneider, maybe he's wrong. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but he felt they had a better chance of getting out of the inning by walking Betts.
And it seems we've reached an impasse, because you cannot convince me that that's correct.
Yeah.
But so for now, we'll have to shake hands and disagree. But I mean, we need to disagree more on the pod anyway, right? Like, we have 2 episodes left. We can't agree on everything. We saw what happened when we agreed, right? So we can't be agreeing on everything. I missed this earlier while I was trying to unfreeze my camera, but Yakyapo and Cheryl Devon, appreciate the follows on Twitch. Join us Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern time, for next week as well, when we have our last episode. But the last sort of L I want to hand out to is another guy named John. And I feel weird, like, bashing someone who obviously has more skin in the game of baseball than I do. Like, it feels awkward for me to call out professionals, like even calling out managers. Like, it feels awkward sometimes because managers know more. Like, I want to clarify that, like, I'm not claiming that I know more about the clubhouses than their own managers do, right? I'm not saying that. I think no player is perfect. No manager is perfect. I don't think that there's any manager that has gone a full season making, every decision correctly. It feels weirder when I have to bash a Hall of Famer. Now that's where John Smoltz is, but I genuinely think John Smoltz is a complete detriment to baseball commentary. And there's troublesome commentators in every sport, and play-by-play broadcasters and, color commentators, former players who end up as analysts, either as desk analysts or as TV commentators. They're scrutinized often, but I don't think John Smoltz is scrutinized enough. And it's been a problem through the entirety of the playoffs that I haven't brought up until now, on the podcast. But John Smoltz has made a habit of continuing to demand that players do things that are negative EV. And when someone who is maybe older or someone who isn't fully familiar with what analytics actually is, whenever they're trying to nitpick analytics, they refuse to understand what EV means, right? Like the answer is always go back to your computer. The computer doesn't play the game. So I have a question for you people who rant like that, right? If I were to tell you that in one situation, a player does exactly what John Smoltz asks, and that situation happens 100 times, and in those 100 times, they score 1 run, and then in a different series of 100 events, you do the same thing that is not what John Smoltz suggests, and you score 11 runs. Which do you think is better to do? And that's essentially what I saw with this tweet. I want to give credit where credit's due, so I want to get this right. But by Matthew Knar, and this is a really good tweet because it kind of summarizes my issues with John Smoltz. Run value per 100 shows you the approximate or the estimated number of runs you will score per 100 pitches in that event. And with first and third, nobody out in, I believe it was game 1, John Smoltz told not Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, not Alejandro Kirk. He said Vlad Guerrero Jr. should try to hit a ground ball with first and third, nobody out, and shorten up his swing instead of elevate the ball. Not taking into account who the actual hitter is, it is objectively better to hit a fly ball, especially in that situation where it is more likely you will score more runs. And telling us that Vladimir Guerrero Jr., of all people, should shorten up his swing and not try to lift the ball is just ridiculous to say. And it kind of ties back into him telling Bryce Miller needs to not try to get a strikeout here, proceeds to get a strikeout on a double play to get out of a bases loaded, nobody out, inning unscathed. Or when John Smoltz says to anybody that he needs to try to make contact here, even if the bases are loaded and there's potential danger of hitting a double play. He needs to try to make contact. He needs to try to get 1 run instead of trying to get multiple. When a team is down 3 runs in the 4th inning, I think John Smoltz has been a huge harm to people watching baseball and trying to understand what's going on. I think when he tries to explain things simply, often he's either tautological in that he says things like the team that wins is probably going to have to score more runs than the other team. But it's even more harmful when he's spreading misinformation, like the best hitter in the lineup should try to hit a ground ball instead of a fly ball. So I wanted to call out one more John to end the episode because I think John Smoltz should not be broadcasting a World Series.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like he definitely, even though he has critiques of the game, I think he still like enjoys doing it and being there, but that doesn't mean he's good at his job. And you probably, and we both would agree that, and probably everyone would agree, he was a much better pitcher than he is a broadcaster. But he actually, one time, he actually did. I mean, this wasn't like he wasn't being a bold dude, but he did say, I don't remember what inning, but he said Glasnow should throw a high fastball now to Barger with 2 strikes. And then Glasnow threw a high fastball and got a strikeout. So he was right once, at least.
I mean, Max will be the guy that calls out the one time John Smoltz was right to mask the utter beatdown I just gave him. So we appreciate Max for always finding the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, because John Smoltz should be at the end of his broadcasting tunnel. Pause if need be again. Whoa, that was crazy to say. But all jokes aside, I mean, I do love when commentators call exactly the event that's about to happen. So I'm always impressed, and I'm happy to hear Tony Romo commentate all the time, even if sometimes he says some weird things, even if sometimes he says some things that may sound awkward socially. I think Tony Romo is awesome because him calling out plays before they happen, reading the defense, seeing the screen, then reading the defense and calling out what Mahomes is going to do or whatever. I think that's super cool. And the fact that I guess I must have missed John Smoltz calling that high fastball. I think that is stuff like that is good. And maybe former players should, if former pitchers should stick to what should the pitcher do here, even if sometimes he's wrong. But maybe he should stick to that instead of trying to suggest that Vlad Guerrero Jr. of all people should hit a ground ball. I thought it was crazy. All jokes aside, like this is a good series so far. I feel like even if the Dodgers finish this in 5, this has potential to be a very, very good series. Every single game so far has been entertaining for a different reason. Baseball is in a good spot, and I hope more owners pay up for superstars. Teams with the opportunity to build great teams continue to try to build good teams. And for now, we're going to enjoy this World Series. There's Game 4 tonight. If you want all the bets that I have for Game 4, such as Teoscar Hernandez, my absolute legendary goat of a human being from last night. If you want our bets, head over to wap.com/ball-institute. For the rest of our content as well, head over to the WAP. And for our last episode of the Deep Drive, come back on Twitch and join us Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, or listen to it postmortem on YouTube. But for now, Max, I'll see you for the last episode of the Deep Drive, episode 16, in November.
All right.